Ryoga was once known as the man who saved the world. Despite that, humanity eventually turned against him and begged the gods to put an end to his life. Instead of dying, he was sent back into the past. Now reborn, he awakens as a necromancer once again, but everything began when mysterious portals opened across the world, unleashing countless monsters. As chaos spread, certain humans awakened special abilities and became known as hunters. Among them, 7 powerful individuals rose to the top and established the noble families. However, there was one exception. A young man who had no blessing from any god climbed to the top entirely through his own strength. This boy, once called the Miracle Warrior, had been part of a group known as the Shadow Skulls. But his rapid rise caught the attention of both the noble families and the divine powers behind them. They saw him as a threat that could not be ignored. Soon after, an entire city was consumed by a massive blaze, turning into a scene of destruction. Many warriors had been sent there with one purpose, to eliminate the so-called invincible hero. Amid the chaos, a renowned magic family arrived, their presence marked by a large banner waving above the battlefield. At the center of it all, the young warrior lay on the ground, severely injured. A broken watch rested in his hand as he struggled to breathe. The exhaustion from the brutal fight was clear on his face. Even after losing an arm, he forced himself to remain conscious, staring directly at his enemy. Filled with anger, he shouted at the old mage standing before him, Dimitri, blaming him for the destruction surrounding them. The old mage remained calm, watching everything from above as if it were nothing more than a spectacle. There was no sympathy in his eyes. Instead, he mocked the boy's condition. With a weak voice, the young warrior questioned him. He wanted to know why they were so determined to kill him. Was it because he lacked divine power or because he refused to join the noble families? The old man laughed and admitted it was both. He explained that the gods despise those who become strong without relying on them. He also revealed that someone like the immortal king, who holds power equal to the gods, is exactly what they fear. The young man rejected his words, calling them meaningless, but the mage continued, saying that undead magic violates the natural laws of the world and disrupts its balance. At that moment, a golden light began to shine from the old mage's body. He declared that the heavens had abandoned the young warrior. The boy responded with a faint smile, mocking him for depending on borrowed power. He warned that there was a reason he had been holding back until now. Slowly, he raised his hand. Dark energy started to spread from his injured body. The bones scattered across the battlefield began to shake, glowing with a deep purple aura. A violent surge of dark magic filled the area, proving that he was not finished yet. Using a hidden technique, he created a powerful domain of despair, covering everything around his enemy. The old mage quickly realized what was happening as countless skeletons began to rise, drawn by the power of souls. Seeing this, the mage acknowledged the boy's remaining strength. In response, he prepared his most destructive spell. He summoned a massive divine flame, releasing a golden beam that shot toward the ground. The young warrior looked up in shock as the attack descended, powerful enough to erase him completely. He understood that if his shadow barrier failed to block it, everything would end. A massive explosion of red light followed, filled with overwhelming destructive force. At the same time, the beam rushed toward him without slowing down. Even in that critical moment, the young man didn't panic. Instead, he smiled. With nothing left to lose, he chose to risk everything for one final attempt. And for the first time, the old mage looked genuinely surprised. The old mage couldn't understand it. Even at the edge of death, the young warrior was smiling. At that moment, the boy revealed a small golden pocket watch he had been holding all along. Raising it toward his opponent, he calmly stated that this artifact had the ability to influence time itself. A system message appeared, indicating that if certain conditions were fulfilled, the watch could return its user to the past. Suddenly, a burst of golden light spread across the battlefield, and time itself began to around the young warrior. He explained that although he never possessed divine power, he had discovered something far more unusual. He could absorb the power of others. Using the watch, he began drawing in the energy from the mage's attack. The old man watched in disbelief as the situation unfolded. For the first time, Dimitri lost his composure and shouted in panic, demanding to know what the boy was doing. The young warrior simply replied that he would take the very divine power the mage had been so proud of. With a calm but confident expression, he promised that in the next timeline he would destroy the noble families completely. As the light intensified, the hands of the watch began spinning backward at incredible speed. Soon everything was swallowed by a blinding flash, and the warrior's consciousness faded along with it. When he opened his eyes again, the first thing he saw was a plain ceiling. He found himself lying in a familiar bed inside an ordinary room. For a moment his body felt disoriented. He placed a hand over his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing, and quickly looked around. Everything looked exactly the same as he remembered. The television, the refrigerator, the furniture. This was the house he had lived in before everything changed. Sitting up, he glanced at the clock nearby, questioning whether his desperate plan had truly succeeded. Then anger surfaced in his expression. He swore to take revenge on Dmitri for everything that had happened. Just then, a blue system screen appeared in front of him. It informed him that the pocket watch was now broken and could no longer be used. Despite that, a faint smile formed on his face. The gamble had worked. He quickly realized the timing. This was the exact day when the system had first appeared nearly 10 years ago. Soon after, another screen appeared displaying his status. His level had been reset to 1, marking him as a beginner once again. The system then prompted him to choose a starting class from 3 available options. As expected, only the most basic classes were accessible at this stage. This time, however, he chose to remain cautious. Instead of rushing ahead like before, he decided his priority would be survival. With that in mind, he got out of bed, put on a jacket, and prepared to act. Using the knowledge from his previous life, he made his way to a large building known as the Natsu Hawara Hunter Market. Inside, an employee greeted him politely and began explaining the various items available. However, he interrupted her and directly asked about a specific item, the Ring of the Dark. The woman looked confused by his sudden question and responded that the item was considered cursed, but the young man already knew that. He simply asked for its price. Not long after, he was seen leaving the market with his purchase. Even the employee had questioned his decision, unsure why anyone would willingly buy such a dangerous item. Opening the box, he looked at the ring inside. Because of its curse, it wasn't considered valuable by most people. A system screen appeared showing the details of the item, Ring of Lesser Darkness, and the severe curse attached to it. Despite the risks, he calmly put the ring on his finger. A dark aura immediately began to surround him. For most people, the curse would be unbearable, but he was different. He understood exactly how to control it, and just like that, the power of necromancy returned to him once again. A faint, dangerous smile appeared on Ryoga's face as he felt dark energy spreading through his entire body. In the next moment, his surroundings changed completely. He found himself standing in a dark, empty space that felt endless, like a void with no beginning or end. Ryoga understood immediately. This was the trial created by the ring's curse. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. Soon, the curse took form. A golden figure appeared in front of him, taking the shape of his greatest enemy, Dmitri. Even while facing that overwhelming presence, Ryoga didn't show any fear. He stood calmly staring directly at the illusion. The figure mocked him, claiming that even the stars had abandoned him. Then it raised its hand, sending a powerful attack aimed straight at Ryoga's mind. The voice continued, saying that even if Ryoga had returned to the past, he would never be able to defeat him. At once, a storm of blinding light crashed down on Ryoga, attempting to break his will completely. But instead of panicking, Ryoga smiled. The system activated, instantly blocking the mental attack. His passive ability, Clear Mind, protected him from the curse's influence. A message appeared confirming that he had successfully passed the ring's trial. But with that, the dark void around him began to collapse, slowly fading away until everything disappeared. When Ryoga returned to reality, a blue flame ignited within his eye. A dark aura surrounded his body, growing stronger with each passing second. In a calm voice, he declared that he would build an army powerful enough to rival the gods themselves. At the same time, the ring on his finger evolved, rising from rare rank to epic. Standing there, Ryoga looked satisfied. He had overcome the curse and gained control over its power. Just then, the system opened a new screen, presenting him with 4 class options. Without hesitation, Ryoga selected Necromancer, a class that draws strength from souls. The moment he made his choice, a deep purple aura formed around him, and a symbol representing his new class appeared. Along with it, he gained a passive skill called Guide of the Departed, which would assist him moving forward. Although he acknowledged this as a good start, Ryoga remained realistic. When he checked his abilities, he noticed he only had 2 skills so far. One that allowed him to raise the fallen, and another that gave him basic control. Even with his past knowledge, he knew this level of power wasn't enough. If he continued to follow the system's standard path, he would never reach the level he needed. Becoming a necromancer this early was useful, but it still fell short of his goal. To defeat Dimitri, Ryoga needed something far greater, power from an ancient constellation. With a clear plan in mind, Ryoga left immediately. He boarded a plane and traveled far from the mainland, heading toward a remote island. His destination was the ancient temple of Cronus, a place tied to the god of time. It was said that fallen constellations existed there, beings who had lost their light after being defeated by Zeus. Some of these ancient titans had accepted their fate and continued to exist in a weakened form. Arriving at the temple, Ryoga stood before an old stone structure. He remembered that the broken pocket watch once belonged to one of these fallen beings. Now was the time to find that constellation. Without hesitation, Ryoga slammed the shattered watch onto the ancient altar. Immediately, a bright golden light burst out from the fragments. At the same time, the ground beneath him began to shake violently, and the surroundings started to break apart. In an instant, Ryoga was transported to a massive hall. Behind him stood a large stained glass window glowing faintly. As he looked around, a deep voice echoed through the space asking who had entered. Moments later, a massive presence appeared filled with anger. It demanded to know who dared to disturb it. Despite standing before such an overwhelming being, Ryoga remained calm. A slight smile appeared on his face. He showed no fear. Instead, he greeted the entity directly, Cronus, the fallen king of the Titans. The ancient being in front of Ryoga observed him carefully, its gaze sharp and filled with suspicion. Even now, Ryoga still held the broken pieces of the pocket watch that had brought him here. The Titan spoke, asking if he was truly the same human who had managed to travel back through time. Ryoga gave a small smile and confirmed it, raising the shattered watch as proof. The entity acknowledged his achievement but questioned his purpose. It asked why he had awakened it from its long slumber, reminding him that Cronus had already lost everything in the war against Olympus and had been reduced to a forgotten existence. With a calm yet dangerous expression, Ryoga asked a simple question: didn't the ancient gods still desire revenge? Cronus was visibly surprised. His expression turned serious as he demanded Ryoga repeat those words. Without hesitation, Ryoga proposed a deal. He suggested that Cronus become his constellation, allowing him to take revenge together. The Titan reacted with anger, stating that no human could ever assist a god in reclaiming vengeance. Throughout the exchange, Ryoga continued holding the broken watch unfazed. He revealed that in his previous life he had reached the level of a 9-star hunter entirely on his own. He also made it clear that the 7 noble families were now his enemies. If he were to bring them down, the influence of Olympus would weaken significantly. However, Cronus dismissed this ambition as insignificant. He pointed out that even after returning to the past, Ryoga had chosen the path of a necromancer. Ryoga responded without backing down. He said that such a judgment might apply to the god of time, but not to the god of harvest. At that moment, an ancient image appeared, revealing the truth. Kronos was not only the ruler of time, but also of harvest. The staff he carried symbolized the Reaper, a force that stood against the natural order of the world. Hearing this, Kronos became furious. The ground beneath them trembled under his anger as he warned Ryoga not to overstep his limits as a human. But Ryoga didn't retreat. Instead, he raised his voice and said this was not the time for empty pride. He questioned whether Kronos truly intended to remain like this forever, powerless, forgotten, and without a name. He continued to provoke him, saying that if things stayed the same, Kronos would only grow weaker while Olympus continued to dominate. Then Ryoga extended his offer again. He invited Kronos to reclaim his power and destroy Olympus once and for all. Deep down, Ryoga knew the risk. If this plan failed, he would be facing a god's wrath with no way out. After a moment of silence, Kronos let out a faint smile. He admitted that his desire for revenge had never truly disappeared. Finally, the Titan made a decision. He declared that he would test whether Ryoga was worthy of his power. Transforming into his vessel would not be easy. It would bring immense pain and suffering. If Ryoga could endure it, Kronos promised to become his constellation. Ryoga was taken aback as he realized the trial had already begun. Kronos extended his hand and announced that Ryoga would become his saint, his representative. Hearing those words, Ryoga was momentarily stunned. He had achieved something far beyond expectations. He had become a god saint. A golden aura began to surround his body as the power of a constellation flowed into him. However, the energy inside him didn't remain stable. The power of darkness within him began to clash violently with this new divine force. Ryoga understood the danger immediately. If he lost consciousness now, he would lose his only chance to secure Kronos by his side. Meanwhile, Kronos simply watched in silence, observing the trial with a cold and commanding gaze. The pain was overwhelming, but Ryoga refused to give in. With sheer determination, he forced himself to endure the process until the very end. Sometime later, Ryoga was seen walking calmly across the clean floor of an airport. He had successfully completed his journey and returned to Japan. A confident smile appeared on his face as he looked around, quietly stating that this place was still the best. At that moment, a younger form of Kronos appeared beside him, floating in the air. The god looked around with curiosity and asked if the world had changed much since his time. A system screen appeared, noting the passage of time. It revealed that a new star had entered the pantheon, marking the rise of a new power. Now bound to Ryoga, the Reaper's authority had taken a new form. Ryoga showed respect toward Kronos, speaking calmly. He remarked that for someone who could no longer grant blessings, the god still had quite a presence. In his mind, Ryoga realized something. Even without followers or power, Kronos seemed content in his own way. Kronos had returned through the concept of the Reaper, but in order to regain true strength, he needed recognition and followers. After being sealed away for so long, it was only natural for him to feel excited. Now, he asked Ryoga to spread his name across the world. Ryoga understood the situation clearly. As a saint, he stood in a unique position. In his view, the saint class was one of the strongest, and Kronos had chosen him as his representative. His new class was revealed as Saint of the White Knight. Unlike normal cases, this class placed no restrictions on his necromancer abilities. He could freely convert his secret energy into spiritual power and even use abilities like life drain. Ryoga quickly realized how powerful this combination was. Normally, secret power and necromancy belonged to completely different paths, but being able to use both together created an overwhelming advantage. Kronos explained that a saint exists as the direct representative of a god. Hearing this, Ryoga understood that everything had been planned from the beginning. The god proudly referred to himself as the king of the gods, while Ryoga quietly thought things through. After a brief moment, Ryoga made a decision. With a faint smile, he chose his next destination, the old lodging gate, specifically the ancient garden. It was the perfect place to test his new abilities. The portals that had appeared across the world connected Earth to other dimensions. Some were unstable and disappeared after the dungeon boss was defeated. These were known as fluid-type gates. However, fixed-type gates were different. Places like the ancient garden remained permanently. This particular dungeon was ranked as a one-star gate, making it suitable for beginner hunters. Several hunters were gathered outside, forming groups before entering. Ryoga stood nearby observing everything silently. Soon, a group approached him and invited him to join their party. Without hesitation, Ryoga declined and chose to go alone. The person who invited him looked slightly concerned, but didn't insist further. Within the group, someone whether it was safe for a rookie to enter alone. Another member reassured them, saying it was his own choice. Meanwhile, Ryoga had already made up his mind. At his current level, he didn't need help. He stepped into the portal. A sister message appeared confirming that he had entered the ancient garden. Walking calmly through the forest, Ryoga quickly noticed something unusual. The area was too quiet. He immediately recognized the situation. It was the perfect setup for an ambush. A faint smile appeared on his face. He already knew his first target was close. Suddenly, he looked up. A small monster leaped toward him at high speed. It was a goblin attacking with a dagger. The creature aimed directly at him, but Ryoga easily avoided the strike. The goblin let out a sharp scream as its body began to glow with energy. Without wasting time, Ryoga activated his ability, converting his spiritual power into sacred energy. A system screen appeared displaying the details of his life drain skill. He used it immediately. Placing his hand on the goblin, he began absorbing its life force. The creature struggled and screamed in pain as its energy was drained away. Ryoga noticed that using both types of power together felt surprisingly natural. A faint green aura surrounded him as the process continued. Within moments, the goblin's body withered and collapsed to the ground. At the same time, Ryoga felt his strength increase. He observed that each level provided 5 stat points. Based on this, defeating around 25 goblins would be equal to gaining 1 level. After the fight, a small form of Kronos appeared beside him, floating in air. The god asked if he liked his new power. Ryoga replied honestly, it was far more effective than he had expected. Kronos seemed pleased, proudly observing the result. Ryoga nodded slightly, admitting that the god's choice had been correct. Now that he had regained a physical form, he prepared himself. With a calm but confident expression, Ryoga declared that this was only the beginning. At that moment, a faint green light emerged from the goblin's lifeless body. Ryoga activated another ability. With a cold smile, he commanded the corpse to respond. Slowly, a skeletal hand covered in dark energy rose from the ground. The goblin's body began to lift, controlled by necromantic power. Its form started to change as it was pulled back from death. And just like that, Ryoga created his first undead servant. Ryoga looked at his newly created undead with satisfaction. The creature stood firmly in place, waiting for his command. A system message appeared, confirming that the zombie had a high conversion rate with its stats increased significantly. It was now classified as a 1-star undead, fully prepared for combat. With a servant like this, Ryoga was confident he could clear the entire ancient garden on his own. Without wasting time, he moved deeper into the forest, his zombie following closely behind. Not long after, 3 goblins suddenly emerged from the trees, each carrying weapons. They quickly noticed Ryoga and his undead companion and prepared to attack. Ryoga remained calm. To him, this was nothing more than a test of his current strength. He gave a simple command. His zombie rushed forward immediately, charging at the enemies without hesitation. It struck one of the goblins directly in the face, shattering its teeth with a single punch. The other 2 attacked from behind, stabbing the zombie repeatedly. However, the undead showed no reaction, continuing to move as if nothing had happened. Another goblin attacked from the side, but the result was the same. The creatures began to panic. Ryoga calmly explained that stabbing an undead body wouldn't bring it down so easily. Taking advantage of their confusion, he stepped forward and grabbed one of the goblins by the neck. Lifting it effortlessly, he activated Life Drain and began absorbing its life force. At the same time, his zombie delivered a heavy kick to another goblin, sending it crashing to the ground. Then, turning toward the last one, the undead struck with full force, snapping its neck without mercy. The fight ended quickly. Standing among the fallen bodies, Ryoga wondered if he could draw energy from corpses as well. He tested it, and it worked. Even lifeless bodies could be used to restore his strength. A faint smile appeared on his face as he realized the full potential of his abilities. There was a common idea among hunters: once the first enemy was defeated, the rest of the battle became easier. For Ryoga, the same principle applied. Creating the first undead was the hardest part. Now, there was nothing holding him back. He raised his hand and activated his power again, calling out to the remaining corpses. One by one, the bodies began to move. 4 more zombies rose from the ground, responding to his command. This was exactly what he wanted. His undead army surged forward, overwhelming the remaining goblins in the area. Even when one of the zombies was stabbed, it showed no sign of slowing down. The goblins grew terrified as they realized their attacks had no effect. One of them screamed in fear, unable to comprehend what was happening, before being cut down by the undead. At that moment, Kronos appeared beside Ryoga, watching the scene unfold. The god commented that his contractor should fight with more dignity. Ryoga replied calmly that this was simply how a necromancer fought, and Kronos would have to get used to it. By now, Ryoga had reached his current limit of controlling 20 undead at once. Using his abilities, he absorbed energy from the fallen bodies and expanded his forces further, creating a small army of zombie servants. With a single command, he ordered them to move forward through the forest. Suddenly, a flaming arrow shot through the air. It struck one of the goblins directly, causing it to scream. Ryoga immediately stopped his undead and became alert. There was someone else here. In a firm voice, he called out, telling whoever was hiding to show themselves. After a brief moment, several figures stepped out from behind the trees. Ryoga recognized them instantly. They were the same group that had approached him earlier outside the dungeon. Kronos watched with interest, while Ryoga's expression remained calm. From his past life, he remembered exactly who they were. They were known as the Twin Shadow Hunters. The girl was Yuka Rando, a highly skilled archer. Her brother, Yuma Rando, was a powerful close-range fighter. Looking at them now, Ryoga noticed something different. They weren't as strong as he remembered. At this point in time, they were still only 1-star hunters, and they even had an extra member with them. Ryoga decided not to attack. In his previous life, they had only acted under orders. At that moment, one of the twins stepped forward and asked if he was the one controlling the zombies. Ryoga understood that the necromancer class was still rare and unfamiliar to most people. Without hesitation, he confirmed it. Then, with calm confidence, he showed them his undead army. As Ryoga observed the group of young hunters, an idea formed in his mind. He understood that most beginners were driven by one thing. With that in mind, he approached the trio and made them an offer. He suggested that they work together to collect magic stones, proposing an 80-20th split in his favor. The three hunters exchanged silent glances, clearly unsure about trusting him. The forest remained quiet as they discussed the offer among themselves. The archer and the other boy warned their leader not to trust a strange necromancer like him. Meanwhile, Ryoga stood at a distance, calmly watching them. He found their discussion unnecessarily long, but chose to wait for their answer. After a moment, the leader spoke up and accepted the deal, surprising his teammates. However, he tried to negotiate, asking for a 50-50th split instead. Ryoga didn't hesitate. He adjusted the offer to 70-30ths as his final proposal. After a brief pause, the leader agreed. One of the team members questioned whether this was the right decision, but leader explained his reasoning clearly. If Ryoga had any bad intentions, they would already be dead. Staying with him would likely earn them far more than usual. As the hunt continued, the difference in strength became obvious. After some time, one of the team members collapsed from exhaustion, unable to continue collecting stones. The archer also leaned against a tree, admitting she had reached her limit. The leader looked at the large number of magic stones they had gathered and realized something. From the very beginning, Ryoga had been far beyond an ordinary hunter. The speed at which the dungeon was being cleared exceeded anything he had expected. Ryoga pointed toward the fallen monsters, calmly stating that there was still plenty of profit left. The tired leader asked if they could take a break, but Ryoga didn't stop. His undead army continued moving forward, eliminating another goblin without hesitation. He then pointed at another corpse and instructed them to collect it as well. With a slight smile, he told them there was no need to rush. That moment made it clear to all three of them, Ryoga was not someone normal. After a while, Ryoga concluded that the entire area had been cleared. With the hunt complete, he checked his current stats. A system screen appeared showing a significant increase in all his attributes. In just 3 hours, his stats had reached 212. Satisfied with the progress, Ryoga decided to move deeper into the forest. Now it was time to face the dungeon boss and bring everything to an end. As he advanced, a new group appeared in his path. Stronger goblins led by a shaman stood waiting. The leader of the group stepped forward and declared that a foolish human had entered his territory. Ryoga let out a quiet laugh, mocking the creature for calling itself the ruler of this place. The female hunter quickly warned him, explaining that this was the southern chief and provoking him would be dangerous. The goblin leader's eyes glowed as it gave an order. Its army charged forward ready to tear Ryoga apart, but Ryoga remained calm. His undead army stood ready behind him. One of his zombies stepped forward to intercept, but the enemy proved stronger than expected. With a swift and precise strike, the goblin pierced through the undead body, sending it crashing to the ground. A system message appeared stating that his number of active minions had dropped to 19. Ryoga's expression didn't change. With a cold gaze, he activated his ability once again and commanded the fallen bodies to rise. Moments later, a skeletal hand emerged from the corpse of the recently defeated goblin. The body rose again under his control, and just like that, his army returned to full strength, back to 20 undead servants. The newly created undead didn't hesitate. It immediately turned on the goblins it once fought alongside and attacked without mercy. In a single motion, it grabbed one of them and snapped its neck. The ceramic hunters were stunned. They couldn't believe Ryoga was turning fallen enemies into his own servants so easily. At the same time, the goblin shaman prepared to fight back. He pulled an item from his waist, a staff made from a skull. Slamming the staff into the ground, he activated a totem. A strange energy spread across the battlefield, strengthening the goblins. Their eyes began to glow red as their power increased. The goblin chief proudly announced that this totem boosted his allies while weakening their enemies. However, before the effect could fully settle in, one of Ryoga's zombies rushed forward and destroyed the totem instantly. Ryoga looked at the broken object on the ground and casually questioned what it was. The goblin chief turned in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. Filled with rage, he shouted that a mere human had destroyed his secret weapon. At that moment, Ryoga's undead began picking up fallen weapons. One of them grabbed a staff and launched an attack at a nearby goblin. Another zombie blocked an incoming strike using a bone weapon, stopping the attack completely. The goblin chief was visibly shaken. He hadn't expected his attacks to be countered so easily. Ryoga watched with a slight smile and mocked the shaman, asking if he was already losing control. Enraged, the goblin chief tightened his grip on his weapon and activated another ability. A red aura spread across the entire area. This time, the effect was far more intense. The 3 hunters nearby suddenly felt sharp pain in their heads, struggling to stay focused. At the same time, the goblins grew even stronger, their overall power increasing significantly. The battle quickly shifted. Stronger goblins began overwhelming the undead, destroying several of them in rapid succession. Ryoga's army started to shrink. From 20, it dropped to 10, then even lower. Soon, only 8 zombies remained standing. The ground was now covered with destroyed undead bodies. Ryoga observed everything calmly. He quickly understood that the goblin chief staff was the source of this power. The shaman proudly declared that his weapon was created from the hatred of countless goblins. But Ryoga noticed something important. The staff was made of bones. A faint smile appeared on his face. For him, that changed everything. He activated his ability, Bone Control. Suddenly, the chief's weapon began to shake violently. The goblin froze in confusion as the staff slipped out of his hands, pulled away by an invisible force. In the next moment, the weapon was in Ryoga's control. As soon as he took it, the red aura surrounding the battlefield disappeared, and the curse was broken. The goblins instantly lost their advantage. The chief stared in disbelief, unable to understand what had just happened. Without wasting time, Ryoga used Bone Control again, manipulating the skull attached to the staff. Without wasting time, Ryoga used Bone Control again, manipulating the skull attached to the staff.